You are exactly right, and your setup is way too blurry. So I'm going to record this off of mine, send it to you in this file that you're open, which is a YouTube, which I use Screencastify to get in there, and then we'll have good closed captioning for you. So here we go.
This lesson will focus on creating reading outlines, or applying strategies for reading. Specifically, we're going to look first at how to use subheadings and headings to create a reading outline. Extracting the main idea of a text is often the most difficult task when reading. Frequently, students will become frustrated by details instead of focusing on the heart of the discussion as they read. To understand cause and effect, or relationships between events and people, students must understand the broader context of the argument before they can apply specific details properly. So what do? You need to make an outline of each chapter as you read. The chapter title will be at the top. The first heading is Roman numeral 1, the second is Roman numeral 2, etc. In your text, The American Pageant, there aren't any subheadings, but if there were, the first subheading would be A and the second one capital B. Let's look at the first chapter. You will read the first chapter as part of this lesson, and that chapter is titled New World Beginnings. The first three headings are listed here: The Shaping of North America, Peopling the Americas, and the Earliest Americans. Although there are 10 or 12 different headings, we're going to look at these first three. Once you've written down your main topic, so you skim, you write down your main headings, now you're ready to take notes on each section. Here's the first one, The Shaping of North America. You'll notice I have my heading, and then I'm going to take notes as I read. At this point, I have recorded history began 6,000 years ago. It was 500 years ago that Europeans set foot on the Americas to begin the era of accurately recorded history of the continent. So, just your basic, I'm taking notes as I read. But you'll also notice I'm doing a couple things differently. For example, I have a word here in bold and something that has been underlined. And this lets me know when I go back to review my notes that this was something that I thought was particularly important. So I have the theory of Pangaea exists, suggesting that the continents were once nestled together into one mega-continent. The continents then spread out as drifting islands. So this is something that I've indicated is important in my notes so that I know when I go back and study my notes to pay close attention to this. My second topic is Peopling the Americas. Again, I have some basic notes, my land bridge theory and a description of that theory, and then I have some discussion of the people of the Americas, and you'll notice again there's a couple things in bold. So you can see that I have indicated with bold or highlighting in notes an important term, and I've underlined something that I think is important. You'll also notice down on the bottom that I have focused on particular tribes, and I have the comment that countless tribes emerged with an estimated 2,000 languages, but I've noted what I thought were the three most important and important information about those three that I discovered as I read. Now my third topic has a lot of text, so we won't go through and read this specifically, although you can see that again, I'm in that outline format. I have the development of corn, I have the Pueblo Indians, I have a list of other Indians, and I also have things that I thought were important in bold, whether it's particular leaders, whether it's particular the confederations. And then down at the bottom, you'll notice that I also have listed that the differences between Native Americans and the Europeans who would later come to settle the lands. And so I've already started to make some connections between the natives and the Europeans who were going to colonize the Americas. So I've done the basics, I've taken my notes. Now the next step is to write a summary. Here's an example of a summary from this particular chapter. So we took a 20-some page chapter and we boiled it down to 3 paragraphs. And this is checking my understanding, but it's also giving me a quick summary to study at the end of the class, for example, when it's time to take the AP test. And in my summary, I have what I consider to be the 3 main points or the 3 main themes of this reading. The first is describing how the first inhabitants came to inhabit the land, both in terms of how the land came to exist and in terms of how the people migrated to these lands. Then I have a discussion of why the Europeans decided to explore and colonize these areas. And then finally, I have comments about how the native peoples were affected by that colonization. So I have my 3 main points that are part of my summary. And that leads me to the next step. Next, I want to analyze the visuals in the chapter. I can either summarize or copy important maps and charts. 2 of the visuals that I noticed in Chapter 1 that I thought were important were Figure 1.1, which describes the Columbian Exchange. And this is important because it shows the natural resources that were taken from the New World and used to create finished products in Europe. It also shows how Africa was affected by the slave trade and how the New World came to rely on the products that were being produced in the European world. And so I thought that this was a really good chart that I would probably want to copy down into my notes to refer to later because it gives me a really good visual. The next thing that I noticed in this chapter was that there was a chronology of events at the end of the chapter, and I thought that might be important for studying later. And so I might want to copy down the entire chronology or write a summary of it, or in some way make sure that gets included in my notes. Additionally, when you're analyzing visuals, you should look for any primary sources. Now, there weren't a lot of primary sources or documents within this chapter, but in later chapters there will be, and so it's important to note them as you read your chapter. The next step is to review your notes and develop themes. Now, my summary contained a couple of these things, but I want to write the themes out here explicitly. And then to check the key terms in the back of the chapter and to answer the review questions in the back of the chapter. So I decided my key themes were the origins of the Native Americans, and specifically, I was surprised by the tremendous differences among the Indian people. And so that was something that I wanted to make sure that I kept in mind later. And along those lines, I wanted to be able to compare and contrast the life of the Native Americans. So what were some of the important traits of the people that lived in different regions? Also, I wanted to be able to answer the question, what were the reasons driving expansion and colonization? And how did colonization and expansion impact the native peoples? So these were the themes that I thought I needed to be able to answer in order to say I understood the chapter.
All right, so let's hope this works. Let me know if it does or doesn't, and we'll figure out another way if it does not. Have a great day.